So, thank you very much for being here, everyone. We were wondering whether we should book the National Stadium, but good thing we didn't. Let me speak about a couple of things. These are just remarks on the launch of the book. My name is first because it starts with a C, not because I'm the most significant editor. And I'm here because the rest of them didn't want to be. So, but I shall call on Kenneth at the end to help me out. So, the first thing I want to speak about is the background. The background to the writing of this book. This quite amazing book, if I may say so myself, that was written 38 years ago. This was the result of many sessions of discussions held in 1985 and 1986, and perhaps even in 87, by a group of friends and acquaintances. And we discussed the subject that became the book. We took notes, we discussed things further, we distilled it, and finally different people and different groups wrote contributing pieces and essays. And then we tasked a number of us to edit the book, to edit all the submissions, and then it became this book. So, who were these people? Well, they were, it was so long ago, and I don't even have a number to how many people exactly. Some came and went, and others sort of were there for most sessions. Maybe a dozen, more than a dozen people. Who were they? They were returnees from, student returnees from foreign universities in the UK and the US, local university and poly graduates. I speak about this because we were all very young then. We were in our 20s. We were in our 20s, and there were activists from the student Christian movement, from the members of the Justice and Peace Commission of the Catholic Church, young professional members of the Law Society, members of theatre group, the significant theatre group called Third Stage, which does not exist anymore, but whose two founders are here, Chun Suan Tzu and Wong Suk Yi, and a whole range of people. I mean, we were united, I suppose, by trying to be educated, responsible Singaporeans concerned about how to participate in the progress and in the development of Singapore society, largely speaking. So we got together, we discussed the ideas, we wrote the parts that became this book. That was 1985, 86, 87. And just before we were going to publish this book, something happened. That something, unfortunately, was, the time it happened was May 21st, today is May 20th, and June 20th, 1987. And what happened was Operation Spectrum, a sledgehammer act of the state, passing off as a security, is a political act passing off as a security operation. Operation Spectrum, of course, was the arrest and detention of 22 people, and popularly known as the Marxist conspiracy. So that happened, and I think it was clear to us that it didn't happen because of the book. obviously not. But we felt that maybe writing the book was one of our crimes. And so, of course, at that point in time, the book was stillborn, and it was hidden. It was, but and the interesting thing was that the ISD actually had no idea about the existence of the book. Okay, no idea, which was a good thing. It meant that there were no moles amongst the people who wrote the book. But in the course of interrogating and questioning some of us who were already arrested and detained, plus maybe others who were not arrested but questioned, the ISD came to know about the existence of this manuscript. And so they asked to have it. We, of course, very obediently complied and gave them the manuscript. Now that's very significant because I want to share something that's not very well known, and I should share it as a matter of historical record. So one day while I was in detention in 1987, and after we had submitted this book or manuscript to ISD, the then director of ISD, the late Chong Ip Meng, who saw me every now and then when I was his prisoner, he came to me and he said, "I've read the book. There's nothing wrong with it. No problem for us." So I cheekily asked him, "Can you write the foreword for us?" I can't remember what his response was. I think he didn't say anything. He just gave me a wry smile. Anyway, so there it is. ISD had no problem with the book. And that's the reason why I would say, and that was 40 years ago. And if you read the book, and as Wai Han pointed out, this book is not about the PAP. It is about Singapore. It speaks of the PAP. It tries to end, because the PAP then as now was the hegemonic, dominant, political party and political power in Singapore. So, and of course, the book was an analysis of Singapore politics. And that brings me to the last point I wanted to share with you, which is, what is this book about? Well, I hope that all of you here will get a copy and read it and buy copies for your friends. It was written 38 years ago, but it's not a historical relic. It lay sort of hidden and forgotten and for 38 years, and I never imagined that it would see the light of day. But sometime last year, a few people decided to take a look at it again and thought that, hey, maybe the time has come for this book to be published. And so a few of us got together, we decided to, we agreed to act as editors. You will notice that this book has on its cover a list of editors, but not authors. Because, and I explain why, because there were many people, there were many contributors. It was the distillation, it was the great effort of research and writing and discussion. And so it is, we cannot actually name the writers because there were many. We did not seek all of everyone's permission to publish it now, except that we think that it is timely, it is still amazingly, sadly or happily, still relevant to this present day. And and what it is it begins with a very vivid journalistic account of the political atmosphere at that time. And the significant political event at the time was the May 1984, not May, the 1984 general elections, and just before that, the landmark 1981 Anson by-election. And it is rather coincidental that we are at Anson building. And 1981 Anson by-election was when J.B. Jeyaretnam was elected, breaking the monopoly of the PAP in Parliament for 16 years, after the 1966 walkout of Parliament by the Barisan Socialists. So then there was the 1984 general elections, and then so the first part of the book was a very vivid account of the GE and the atmosphere at the time. Then the other parts of the book, part 2, 3, 4, speaks about really it is a prime and accountable to its citizens. And what did that look like? What were the institutions that had to be built or had to be present for the society to be open and accountable, for the government to be open and accountable? And so we discuss elements that, it's not a comprehensive list, but we discuss elements that could make this happen. Competitive elections, an independent judiciary, we call pressure groups, the legitimacy of pressure groups, respected by the government, acknowledging their role that they can play in the contribution of building society, because not one party or stakeholder or element of society can do everything. And so the final part of the book was called Towards Participation. So that is a summary of the book, not a very comprehensive one, but it gives you an idea of what this was about. And it is that summary that we think is still quite relevant today. Even though it's theoretical, but it is almost like a textbook of, okay, this is how you build an open society and an accountable government. And I think that that objective is still something which we hope to achieve in a progressive way, to build a Singapore that is ever prospering, ever progressing. So I think that is what I wanted to say, and I want to just conclude with a parting quotation. This was something which a few days ago I was at a friend's office, and he read out something to me, and I have asked my fellow editor and friend Kenneth Sang to come up here and do me the honor and do us the honor of reading this piece. It is a fairly lengthy quotation. Kenneth will read it, and then at the end of it he will tell you who the author is. Thank you.
Right. Artists and entrepreneurs are blessed with similar convictions. Both are innovators. They see possibilities where others see limitations, bringing the previously unimagined into being. Both have skin in the game, living in the theatre of risk, performing on the public stage of jeopardy. Failure can be brutal, and success is often a prelude to future disappointment. But they are driven ever forward by self-expression. It's in the DNA of these independent, slightly unreasonable, regularly difficult people. Cussed mindsets have no alternative. Both the artist and the entrepreneur suffocate when shackled by a boss, a wage, or an insurance premium. Born disruptors, truly great artists and entrepreneurs are modernists, creating demand where none previously existed, conjuring something out of their imagination and courage. Unlike the critic, the artist and the entrepreneur are eternally optimistic. They must believe in the future. The optimism of their will overcomes the pessimism of their intellect. Originality is their currency and constant adaptation their tool. The artist and the entrepreneur, so often pitted against each other, are in fact on the same side. Historically, societies that welcome these dissenters are rewarded with the most dynamic economies. Healthy economies, like healthy artistic cultures, thrive on dissent and diversity. As the 20th century economist Joseph Schumpeter noted, the essential fact of any economy is innovation, or what he termed the relentless gale of creative disruption. Any country open to independent thought that venerates diversity is also likely to generate innovative energy. Societies that dignify outsiders prosper economically and artistically as courageous types express themselves creatively and commercially. These are the traits of a liberal society: open, non-judgmental, preferring rationality over superstition, science over falsehood, proof over conjecture, reason over religion, and questioning over dogma. This came from an article written in the Financial Times on the 11th of June 2022 by David McWilliams. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. So now we will take questions from the audience, and I hope that besides myself, my fellow editors Kenneth, Solan, and Ji Sing will also respond where they will. Wayan?
Thank you, Kenneth, and thank you, Casey. We have to thank some special people, and they are the ones there, Mr. Michael Chua and his good friend, Ms. Chia Salim, who run this bistro, Palm Bistro. You know, it's very difficult to find a venue for this kind of talks, these kinds of books. We had one, it had to close. We have another, it's still alive. So watch out for more invitations, yeah, from either individuals for organizing things in this wonderful industrial park called Ubi, or from Functionate. Now, over to you. Anybody who has read the book would like to say anything, or you have questions, burning questions? No? Yes? Yes, Ben. Come up here.
Oh, no callers mic. Sorry, there's no callers mic. You have to come up and ask your question.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Ben. So congrats Casey and the many editors for this book. I guess I haven't read the book, I'm so sorry. But I guess the question I had was, you know, I thought it's inspiring that you've published this after 40 years. And I was wondering if you could shed some light for those of us who haven't been here during the time, how life was like. Specifically, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. You paint a picture of the 80s being a very vibrant place where people discuss ideas. And I guess in the last 20, 30 years, that has sort of mellowed down a little bit. And maybe in the last few years, we're seeing a bit of re-emergence of that sort of more dynamic space. So maybe in that context, and history is our guide, what are some of the things you find promising about? And what are some of the things that you think we got to watch out because history is going to repeat itself? Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. The 90s were not a vibrant time politically at all. Despite what I say and despite what the book describes, then let me explain why I say this. In fact, the vibrancy was an exception. It was almost a reawakening of 20 years of general apathy from the young people. So I'm talking about the young people. Those of us, of course, who understand Singapore political history will know that the 50s, the 60s were a vibrant time politically. But by the time I was in secondary school in the 70s, I remember reading The Battle for Merger by Lee Kuan Yew and the description of the tremendous fervor and ferment of the politics of the day. And I thought, where have all the politics gone? I mean, growing up in Singapore in the 70s, there's generally total apathy. The difference in the 80s was, in fact, as I mentioned, the event was the 1981 by-elections that brought J.B. Jeyaretnam into Parliament for the first time in 16 years of total monopoly by the PAP in Parliament. So that created a stir, and and then subsequently the question was, will JBJ retain Anson? And in 1984, the general elections, that was the excitement, and in fact, I think the excitement and the changes in the atmosphere, that was what also inspired and galvanized us as young people, as young professionals, to start thinking about and discussing what future possibilities there might be. And of course, in '87, when just as there was going to, there's going to be some re-energizing of the political scene, 1987 Operation Spectrum happened, and that was a very significant political event because it meant essentially it cost a generation. It just was a clampdown that chilled, Operation Spectrum chilled political activism for a whole generation, for 20 years. And it's only in the late 90s or even in the early noughties that again there seems to be a new interest in politics. I guess I welcome, of course, other people's comments, but I guess my own thought about it is that, there is a history which one has to grapple with, and which has affected the present circumstances. But these are very different times. The kind of heavy hand of the state in the 60s and the 70s, the very intense political struggles of the PAP in government, of the contestation with the Barisan, that was a particular time. And really now, and if I may say so, those were desperate times for the PAP, desperate for their survival, desperate time for Lee Kuan Yew. And so he acted desperately. He acted desperately by having such a as I said, a sledgehammer sort of. He took a sledgehammer to the opposition and to his critics. Now, in my mind, these are not such desperate times. So why doesn't the government just, chill a little? Why do you have to go after Jolovan Wham and TOC and Terry Sue? I mean, what's the meaning of this? Are they your enemies? Are they out to destroy Singapore? Why don't you just learn how to appreciate that? It takes many cooks to prepare a banquet for Singapore, right? So the question is, well, what about now? Well, as we heard in the quotation that was read out by Kenneth, some people are eternal optimists. I'm one of them. So I think that, and it's one thing to be optimistic, it's another thing to lend a hand to talk about ideas and that can build a better society, and that is what the contents of the book is about, which is why we decided that the time has come for us to have it see the light of day. So Ben, I'm not sure if that answers your question, and I wonder if any of the other editors or anybody else besides the editors would care to comment further on this observation.
Yes, Ghana.
Yeah, maybe I can just comment. They pulled out after the 1984 elections. They pulled out so many stops that it makes it so difficult. For instance, one of the things that we helped J.B. Jeyaretnam of the Workers' Party with was that we helped him to make this. We had discussions with him so he can raise questions in Parliament. Today I'm told that you can't even raise too many questions in Parliament. I think each MP can only raise 2 questions per month or something of that kind. The schools have basically, just moved on with very much more policies. The police have really come up to just close down so much of that freedoms that we at least had in those days. I think things have actually gone worse. If you look into the book, there's a whole section that deals with PAP ideology and their power. Because the contributors of the book felt that while we participated in the heyday of the 1981 and the 84 elections and enjoyed the freedoms during that small period of time to voice our expressions, we also wanted to examine what actually drives the PAP to do what they do. And they are basically a very elitist. The basis of the ideology is elitism. And it's this elitism that basically spells out the rule and those who rule. Alright. The rulers and the ruled. And they are the rulers. And they will put all the laws there are and erect all the barricades so that they will always maintain their position. Read that book and find out for yourself. It's pretty well written because the contributions actually show that out. But what's more important is actually the final section of the book. In the final section of the book, a lot of contribution of ideas as to what participation into the future. And there we've written, a number of ideas, which I think, ought to be read and ought to be read by the new generation, so that we can actually bring up more of that political debate and the consciousness amongst younger people. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I did, thank you. I just remembered there's something I forgot to say in my opening remarks, which I would like to say. And that is that this book was written 38 years ago, and what you see today was exactly that manuscript of 38 years ago. We did not change a single word. Well, I mean, we thought about it, should we update it? You know, I mean, things have changed, there are different circumstances now, different scenes. But we decided not to change a word. Except for the preface that was written, you know, in this time. The rest of the book is a faithful, is a faithful sort of publishing of what was written 38 years ago. We didn't change a single thing. So some things may seem perhaps different and out of date, but bear that in mind, that's because it was written 38 years ago.
Just to clarify a little, the substance totally unchanged, word for word. Bad spelling, poor grammar. The editors had to change. That's why they are called editors. Two things that were mentioned. Anson, do you know this was Anson constituency? You are sitting on very hallowed grounds. 81, 84. I was barely out of university and working, and it was euphoric for us to see the results in the papers. The second thing they mentioned a few times, the phrase Operation Spectrum. For those who have read or known of the book called 1987, Untracing the Conspiracy, or Singapore's Marxist Conspiracy, in quotes, and then the film done by Jason Su here. Half the people in that book, who wrote in that book, are here. Because of that, I say we have hope. If they can still come and lay claim to their interest in what's happening in Singapore, we have hope. If none of them came, I say silent, we have no hope. And the fact that the four of them, they were all four of them, were detainees in 1987. They stuck their necks out again. Okay? So make sure you collect enough bandages for them, in time to come if anything happens to them. They have really, when I say stuck out their neck, I meant it. Not many people want to chop anymore. I resort to a bit of Singlish because this is the language of the young nowadays. And one thing we might lament, we wish there were more younger ones here. Not bad, quite a few here. And a lot of young at heart still here. Okay, does anybody? Yes, Alex, will you say something?
I just want to make a point. I came late. It's okay. It's okay. I came a bit late. So, hearing from your point, you mentioned the word apathy, did you? Apathy of the young generation. That would be from which point the apathiness commenced? From which year? Would it be the 1968 election or the 1972 election?
No, okay, to clarify, I was talking about the 70s and the 80s. The students were apathetic, and I think that a better reading would be that, you see, my question was, what happened to all this incredible sort of political fervor that Lee Kuan Yew spoke about in his book, The Battle for Merger, which was also written in pre-62, right? Now, what happened, of course, in 1963 was Operation Cold Storm. That was perhaps the most significant political event that happened in the last 70 years, because Cold Store broke the back of the opposition parties or party, the Barisan, and Cold Store lays such a pall over Singaporeans that it induced such fear among the population, so that perhaps one part of the population was not apathetic but essentially silenced and fearful, and then those that were not then exposed to the politics of the day were apathetic. So that is the context for the apathy of that time.
Right. Now I go through the trajectory. Post Operation Cold Store, we had the Hong Lim by-election, 65, right? July. So far so good. Activism, excitement. Came the Merdeka, or rather the Independence Day, 65, August the 9th. Then we have this, as you use the word, apathy. I want to acknowledge Tan Wah Piao, 1975, when he led the University of Singapore, the youth movement. I think it was the Socialist Club of the University of Singapore, I may be wrong there, or the University of Singapore Democratic Socialist Club. Anyway,
Actually, it was the University of Singapore Students' Union, not the Socialist Club.
What happened to the Socialist Club? It was defunct, right? Together with the Singapore Democratic, I beg your pardon, the Democratic, I'm going to mix up there, anyway, forget about that. So let's talk about Tan Wah Piao.
The Socialist Club, sorry, Alex, don't mean to interrupt you. The Socialist Club became the Democratic Socialist Club.
Correct. So Wah Piao was leader of the Students' Union. And I think it was Juliet Chin. She was the chairperson of the club. Am I right? I think so.
After he was not president.
That would be the point, you know. That, I think no more battery. In my opinion, that would be the point of the revivalism of this activism. But it was nipped in the bud. And henceforth, there was this period of apathy from 77, 78, the 76 general election, when the PAP swept clean, third time round. After that came the apathy until JBJ victory in the...
Your mic is keeps dying on you. Come up, Alex, down to the mic.
Okay, I wanted to trace the trajectory from the period when there was a lot of activism following the Hong Lim by-election of 1965. We were still in Malaysia. Lots of activism until Separation Day, August 9, 1965. Then came the focus, the concentration on economic development. 1966, 68, massive victory for the PAP with only 8 seats contested. And then came 69 and 70, and then 74, 75. That's where Tan Wah Piao made his debut as one of the leaders of the University of Singapore Students' Union. Juliet Chin was the president or the chairman of that union. Nipped in the bud, and then after that, 77 onwards, there was this apathy until your generation came in 1982. The by-election of Anson here, this very spot where I'm standing, Darling Singh School. I was here. So I'm just trying to trace, the reason why I bring this up is just to trace the trajectory for the younger generation to understand the aberration in Singapore's politics just before Wah Piao, and then Wah Piao hitting the news, and then the rest is history.
Thank you, Alex. For those who would like to say something, if you don't mind, come forward if the mic is not the cordless mic is not working. There's one more there. Anyone want to say anything? Yes, Mr. Kwan.
Must I come to the front?
Cameras.
Good afternoon, I'm Kwan Yu King. Come here. One stage as well. Okay. All right. My friend Alex brought up an earlier period of the political history of Operation Spectrum. But I will come back to your Operation Spectrum era. Now, just now you mentioned that about the importance of JBJ winning the 1981 by-election in Anson. That I absolutely agree, and that was a turning point in the politics of Singapore because he, that is JBJ, broke the one-party rule, the monopoly of the one-party rule. That was a huge resounding call all over Singapore, even in the Times House. Straits Times editor was, one of the Straits Times editor was sacked because he cheered loudly for JBJ in Times House. But anyway, so I guess, as what you mentioned just now, Lee Kuan Yew came down very hard post-Anson by-election. All right, as what Mr. Chew has said, he came down very hard subsequent to the Anson by-elections, and Operation Spectrum came about. But before Operation Spectrum, there was still a spark for the opposition in Singapore, because both JBJ and Chiam See Tong won in 1984. So instead of one opposition in Parliament, now we have two. This is double the amount of opposition in Parliament, right? But of course, we know what he did to JBJ and disqualified him and so on. That came later, all right? But then come Operation Spectrum, which you and our good friends here have suffered for. And that, as what you said, sent a chill. It was a horrible chill that dampened the spirit of the opposition in Singapore. I'm very glad that you have mentioned this chilling effect of Operation Spectrum, because I took part in the 1988 general election, just 1 year after the 1987 Operation Spectrum. It was hell of a difficult to get someone to volunteer to come out and campaign with us and walk with us. Terrible. Everybody had Operation Spectrum in their mind. This was the chilling effect. Thank you, Mr. Chew.
Thank you. In fact, if I may recall something which I didn't know firsthand, but one of the stalwarts of the civil society movement, Constance Singham, she recently recalled in a amusing story, but speaking of chill, she said that there was a time, and this was in the 80s, or maybe even it was not in the 80s. In fact, it was not long ago. It was like maybe not long, meaning to say it was not 40 years ago. It was maybe it was about maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. She was having a birthday party at her home, and she had a few friends around her, and this was recent. I mean, 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
No, much more recent.
Oh, much more
recent.
When
I was one of the perpetrators.
Oh, okay. So let me tell the story, but why can't correct me because this is my second-hand version of it. So it was 6 years ago, was it 6 years ago? And then she had a birthday party at her home, and being a birthday party, it was a surprise party. They had a surprise birthday cake for her that was going to be delivered at midnight. So when midnight struck, there was a knock on the door, and constant review and constant shared that when the knock on the door happened 6 years ago, for a moment her mind went blank. She thought the ISD had come for her.
You know why? It wasn't a knock. It was bam, 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 bam. Open up, open up.
Okay, they're playing a nasty trick on their friend. But so that's interesting, right? I mean, it's the spectre or the shadow of spectrum is a long one and haunts even people today. But it's certainly not. It certainly casts a pall on a generation, which I'm glad to say is more or less gone. Gone in the sense, only in the sense that most people don't even know that Operation Spectrum has taken place. Many of the young people I speak to nowadays, have no clue about Operation Spectrum. Interestingly, I asked them, do you know who Ong Teng Cheong is? And they said, no. So there you have it.
Michael, we have to contribute to your PA system. No, sorry, we just get too fired up, I think, burns the wires. Now, really, among us, I can very quickly count at least 15 of the people who were involved in Operation Spectrum. Of course, I won't be so unkind as to call these friends, hey, come up and take a group photo, okay? But you are here, you know who you are, and I say, I want to salute you all, because it was truly a very agonizing time. In fact, if you look at it now, because there's social media, look at all the cameras, you're not VIPs, also so many cameras, huh? And I saw many people taking pictures early on with their handphones. Because of the availability of the internet, social media, very quick uploading of news, I think we are in a much better position to contribute and work towards true democracy. It seems very far away, okay, with all the recent POFMAs just last night. Solang was telling me, Kirsten kena POFMA also. She's waiting for her turn again. So, does it seem hopeless? I like to think not, really not. Because the more we step back, the worse it will be. So we must continue to push that envelope, however little, millimeter by millimeter, move on. And so there are enough young people here to give me hope, to say that you are still interested, you're interested enough to come, to listen, and be bored maybe. So anyone else with more interesting stories? Yes. Is that Mr. Lee? This is Mr. Lee Chiu San, the author of a book, By My Beloved Country.
Okay, I'm to share a story, not the first-hand one, the second-hand one. Is Swansea here?
Yes.
Okay. What happened is that her brother was my classmate, a very close friend of mine, and he was away. He was a lecturer in Canada, and he was coming back for a visit to the family after a long absence. And when he came back, he was wondering, where's my dear little sister? And The family could not tell him what had happened to her, because I was told when they inquired with the police, nobody knew where she had gone to. So for a few days he was utterly traumatized, because that's his dear little sister, and she and the family didn't know at all what happened to her. It was only much later that they found out that she was one of those picked up in Operation Spectrum. So that was how traumatic it was from a personal point of view, told to me by her brother. Okay?
真双子
brother?
Yeah,
Chen Ming
yes,
Keng.
yeah, talking about
Yes.
Ming Keng.
Okay. Right, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Ubo. Talk so not 2 times the name, Tiabo, never mind. So we see, okay, that Operation Spectrum did not impact just those who were arrested. It impacted the families, the friends, and really wider society. The episode about Constant Single, the imposter of an ISD man is here from Mofang. He was the one asked to act it out. But can you imagine the fear? There were about 10 of them inside the flat. And when he did this pam 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 pam, they all froze and they pushed. Who's going to open the door? Guess who? The intrepid lawyer, Peter Low. And then we burst in and sang happy birthday. What terrible friends we were. But it's a very classic illustration, more than 20 years after Operation Spectrum, that this kind of effect is still there. Yes,
Constance's 80th birthday, wasn't it?
yeah, in her home. Constance's 80th birthday. Yes.
Casey, I have a question for you. Can you see me? Yeah, okay. I heard you mention that you were in your 20s when the book was written. This was a time when the young people had fire in the belly and they were all involved in civil society work. And then the operation came, right? And I remember that there was this, the operation covered people from all over Singapore, all the young people actually. And there was this question of, if you want to get involved in politics, join a political party, right? You don't go and infiltrate the law society, you don't go and infiltrate the church, you don't go and infiltrate the different organizations to come and fight us. So there was this change in the narrative that made it seem that they were against the government when it was actually an issue-based thing, right? I remember the church was very active in fighting for workers, things that they are very concerned with today and which are still happening, yeah? So my question is there a role for civil society activists to participate in society apart from being a member of a political party, number one? Number two, the thing I remember most was that one of the criticisms that was tossed against one of the detainees was that she was a lawyer. She still is a lawyer, I think, yeah. But yeah, she was a lawyer, and she was prepared to take $500 in those days. And so therefore there must be a motive, you know. But they could not understand that the people who were interested in society, in helping society, and they were prepared to sacrifice, right? Unlike today, when you need $1 billion salaries, hundreds of thousands of square feet of land, and so on and so on. Yeah. So is there room? Can we shift the narrative back to one where people can take part in the politics or in the affairs of the country without having to join a political party?
That's a very profound question, Ho-Fang, and I'm very happy to say there's a very simple answer to that. And the answer is absolutely yes, of course. It is if I may just speak loosely, it's a damn stupid idea that to take part in politics you must join a political party. Damn stupid idea. I can't think of a stupider idea. Now, why do I say that? And there's a history behind this, right? The history is, I think, I'm sorry to say, it was Goh Chok Tong who responded to Catherine Lim in this way. Catherine Lim wrote an op-ed piece in the Straits Times about the effective divide and all that. And Goh Chok Tong's response was, "How dare you say this? You want to criticize the government? Go and go and join a political party or form one." In fact, there was a precedence before this. I think it was Rajaratnam who also made such a point that don't disguise yourself as some as some civil society actor or whatever it is. You want to take on the government, throw off reveal your political colors. And now, what the fact is, what kind of stupid thinking is that? Politics is not the realm of the politicians alone. Politics in an open society and in a participatory democracy is the responsibility of everyone, all the citizens at various levels. All right, right, and to vote responsibly and intelligently, they need to understand politics. And then there are people who do not want to have to devote their entire life to being a politician. So surely it cannot be said that then they have no role. And precisely these are the people who join civil society, and civil society is very large. It is, different interest groups in terms of catering to the interests of many parts of society. The disabled, the arts, the professions. So again, people can participate where they can spare the time. It doesn't mean to say that if you are a member of a club, you must be the president or you must be in the committee. You can be a member of the club. We are members of a nation. That's the club. You don't need to be the government to participate in that. So I think that it's such of course a fundamental idea, and in fact, interestingly, this was also the subject that was covered in the book at that time when we wrote that, and we said, look, there is room for different people to play a different role at different levels to progress the society.
Thanks, Casey. Okay, functioning is very punctual, but I think Michael will allow us a few more minutes. Thank you. Mr. Taking soon.
I think I'm the oldest in this place. I want to fill in some gaps and also expand on what you have said about participation. 1959, the official opening of the Singapore Polytechnic at Prince Edward Road was officiated by the Duke of Edinburgh, right? Because the Polytechnic was the last of the British projects in Singapore, right? To train up a new generation of technical people who will be able to take over running the country. So we were students there, and some of us locked the gate so that the prince could not come in. Yeah. And I and a few others on the rooftop threw firecrackers, and the police thought it was gunfire, and we all were laughing like hell. And that was the beginning of another movement within the Polytechnic, right? Because this is to exemplify how the feeling in people, right? It's not about politics. It's about a sense of fun, of participation, of wanting to free ourselves to be part of making a better society. Okay. So some of the students then formed a movement to unite all the student bodies in Singapore, right? Of course, they were threatened by the police, and the whole project fizzled out. Now, I also want to say that the youthful spirit is still very much alive, because we are human beings, we are alive, right? And we are also inspired by things that happen not only in Singapore. 1969 in Thailand, okay? Now, interestingly, 1971 was also a very important moment in Singapore. That was when the Lee Kuan Yew government cracked down on all the press except the Straits Times, in order to leave the Straits Times as the monopoly newspaper in Singapore, controlled by the government, right? So many of us were involved, and many of the young people were involved in trying to build up a whole new ownership of the Singapore Herald, for example, because the government charge was that the Singapore Herald was a foreign subversive newspaper, just because Lee Kuan Yew did not like the editor Francis Wong, right? And so we all organized a takeover, and I negotiated with the official receiver to buy over the whole newspaper for $250,000, right? And I didn't realize that the paper stock itself was worth $10 million, which was then sold ultimately to Golkar in Indonesia, right? Of course, we were promised to get the license, right? Tommy Koh, a young guy at the time, agreed to be the chairman of the newspaper, right? And then there's the story of SPUR, Singapore Planning and Urban Research Group, right? Which is a bunch of young professionals, architects mainly, planners, and quite a number of academics in the university, right? And we had, again, this is non-political. This is purely a professional group trying to improve the living environment of Singapore, right? And we organized an exhibition in Esplanade, right? Called Singapore's Environment, Past, Present and Future. And we approached Lee Kuan Yew to be the patron, and he agreed. Yeah. And he wrote a very glowing foreword, right? So he was not unsympathetic to the idea of young people participating, you know. But then we put up pictures of, amongst some of the very interesting pictures, HDB flats juxtaposed against pictures of chicken coops. And the Rahim Izzah was we invited Lee Kuan Yew to come and declare the exhibition open, but he was too busy, so he deputized Rahim Ishak. And Rahim Ishak came and he looked at his pictures and he was totally angry, you know. And I had to bring a tin of paint the next morning at 5 a.m. in the morning and painted out those things, right? So these are the kinds of activities, right? And then 1972, right? The young people were outraged by the bombing of Vietnam by the American forces, despite the fact that there was a series of conferences going on in Paris, right? To find a way, from the American point of view, how to retreat from what was the word they used? How to stop the war? No. How to stop the war and retain honor. You know?
Peace with honor.
Peace with honor. Yes. So you can see that that attracted a whole lot of young people who went to the U.S. Embassy to deliver a protest note to the ambassador, right? And many of us were arrested, including Sun Tzu's brother. Yeah. And then I had a flat which I bought in 1968 in Queenstown, and I had raised a family there, and then we moved out. I bought a small semi-detached house in Frankel Estate, so the house was empty, and I left the house. I allowed Maker, your brother, and a few others. I didn't know that he invited Tan Wah Piao and all that to meet there, right? And the police raided the place, right, several times, and your brother ended up in the police jail, and I had to go and bail him out. Okay, so these are the kinds of activities. Oh, one more thing. Operation Cold Store was at the tail end of a liberation theology that was being promoted by the Catholic Church.
Spectrum.
Sorry, Operation Spectrum, right? And the clergy in Latin America were pushing liberation theology, encouraging a revolt by the dispossessed and underprivileged people in Latin America to rebel against the corrupt and aristocratic order that was there, right? And this movement spread all over the world, including into Southeast Asia, and inspired the student Christian movement in Singapore. Now this is very interesting, because the student Christian movement was eventually overtaken by Varsity Christian Fellowship, which were really right-wing. The student Christian movement were much more humanitarian and much more concerned about social justice and things like that. So you can find that this is also reflected in the development of the churches in Singapore. So now you have this very strange situation in which you have what is now called the prosperity gospel. So you have these mega churches, right? And interestingly, one of my students, Siu Chi, who is the daughter of Lee Hsien Loong, by his first wife, who passed away. He had two children. One was the albino, and the other was this very bright girl, Siu Chi, who was my student, architectural student, right? And when she finished her course, she had to do a design dissertation, and the design dissertation was for a mega church. Okay, so this is so. All I'm saying is that that the human spirit, right, no matter how hard it is suppressed, right, will find its way of expressing it. And I'm very glad to see some of the young people, right, which have formed what they call town hall meetings in Singapore and so on. So this is a very, very, very heartening situation. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Teh, he says he's the oldest, we acknowledge that. He has the privilege to announce something for next week that he's holding.
Oh, this the next Friday there will be another session here, which will Friday conversations, which we have every fortnight we have a meeting in this place. Thanks to Michael, yeah, and a guy called Winfred Koo, who is a Singapore PR but is originally from Penang, will talk about how the medical industry in the world, including Singapore, is being subverted and controlled by huge business interests in the pharmaceutical industries and so on, and how it is suppressing the alternative medicines that are that have been here and are evolving. And I give the example of the medical traditions in China, in Indonesia, and in India. They have developed their own medical traditions which have been very effective. Otherwise, these countries will never have such huge populations. Many of them would have died off. But very few of these traditional medicines have been allowed to be integrated into contemporary orthodox medical practices. So this is the example of overarching political, cultural, technological, professional, business order that is suppressing legitimate traditions that have very important contributions to make. And I think that now that we are facing a very interesting moment in human history in which the monopoly power of the Western Alliance, right, is now cracking, right, and we can see that, and there are many factions that are emerging within those cultures of domination that is now in evidence, and we can see that it's going to have multiplying effects all over the world, as the multipolar world is in contest with the monopolar world, and it's going to affect us.
Thank you very much. Now, we have one final comment from Mr. Kwan, and I've allowed it because it demonstrates to us age is no barrier to interest in life in Singapore. Yeah, Mr. Kwan. He says it'll take 5 minutes only, huh?
Thank you, Ms. Chan. I have to, because Mr. Fong and Dr. Tay brought out the idea of the participation of youth in politics. Now that is a very, very important factor. The whole political future of Singapore rests on our youth. And who are the youth of the day during the time of Operation Spectrum? I can't leave this place tonight without mentioning Mr. Vincent Cheng. Please stand up. He was a useful stalwart of Operation Spectrum. Without him, he led and inspired the 20 over detainees, and he is the one who suffered the most under the hands. All right, the blow they gave to his stomach and his chest. All right, the ISD officers. I remember your painful description, Vincent, when the movie was shown. What was the name of the movie? Untracing the Conspiracy. How the ISD officer gave you a punch and he will double your weight, right, and size. Now, throughout the vicissitudes of the political development of Singapore, now, after 1991, where the swing of votes against the PAP fell to an all-time low after the 1991 general election. How many opposition were elected in 1991? 4. Chiang Si-tong, Lau Tia Kiang, Chow Chai Chen, and Lim Hao Tung. That was really the peak point of the opposition movement. But immediately after that, what happened? The PAP swung everything back. It swung, they took a deep, but they swung back. But it is the youth, right? I feel that because I was an active participant in that era, right, I felt the participation of youth. I relied on, and I saw for myself that it was the youth who swung against the PAP again. In 2011 general election, I was the election agent for Hazel Kwa. Come on, Hazel. I was your election agent in 2011 GE. She stood in Chua Chu Kang, right, Hazel? GRC, I was her election agent. And the vote for the opposition came again. The PAP took another dip. Their votes dropped to 61%. But right after that, in 1996, the swing for the PAP came back again. So, in spite of these vicissitudes, all right, the hope is therefore for the youth of Singapore. We must work to engender the youth of Singapore. There are many people, I have many friends of my age, all right, we sit around the coffee shop and talk and curse and swear at the PAP. They're all white hair like me. But many of them, when I talk to them privately, they say, I still work for the PAP. I say, why do you do that? You're cursing and swearing at the PAP one moment in the coffee shop with me, and the next moment you say you have no, you say, hey Kwan, I have no choice because my son is a teacher. Therefore, I must work for the PAP, otherwise my son is going to lose his job. I mean, what ridiculous. These are self-inflicted fears which the PAP has inculcated to try to stem the fervor of the youth. I myself, when I was only 40 years old, at the peak of my earning career, I founded the SDP with Mr. Chiam See Tong. I was in the inaugural Central Executive Committee. And what about my children? Aren't the careers important? Both my son and daughter were working for government organizations. All right, I'm not afraid to say this. My son worked for SIA, he has left them already. And my daughter was working for POSB. And I was against the PAP. Every step of my breathing, of my breath, I was against the PAP. Basil can testify to that, right? So, there you are. I'm glad that Mr. Fong and Dr. Tay has brought up the idea of youth. It is upon the shoulders of the youth, all right, which will carry Singapore to brighter political future. Sorry,
Thank you. Okay lah, I'm not so old, not so young. So I also speak up for all of us. Whatever your age, you can still have your ideas and work for a better Singapore. Thank you so much for being such a patient audience. Thank you, Casey.